got over 12,000 in front of me. I've gone from being down about 3,000 at the low point to being up about 2,000. I've been playing for hours, and it's a few minutes away from dinner time with my mom and girlfriend. The plan is to rack up shortly, hopefully without having to make any decisions that are too difficult in the meantime. The deck has its own plan for me. I'm dealt pocket jiggities in the small blind. It's another straddle pot, and one player's gone, so it's six-handed at the moment. The player first to act opens at 200. This is annoying because it's a larger than normal size raise, and it's coming from an early position player. The cutoff calls. I don't like any of my options. I'm certainly not folding. I'm on the fence about calling or 3-betting. 3-betting is probably slightly better. Instead, I call, which pretty much turns my hand into pocket deuces. I'm not going to feel comfortable going forward unless I hit a set. The big blind calls. The under the gun straddler in the 2-seat puts in a tiny 3-bet to 850. This is super odd. He probably should have made it closer to 1400. Surprisingly, the initial pre-flop raiser and the cutoff both fold. I'm not going anywhere. The stack to pot ratios are going to potentially get very strange though. I call for 650 more. The big blind also calls. A lot of the time, he's going to have a small to medium pocket pair or some kind of suited connector type hand. He has a 10K stack and can really decimate mine if we happen to get into it together and he comes out ahead. I can't think of a much better time than this to drill a set. Unfortunately, we don't run quite that good. The flop is 7-4-3 rainbow. This is such an uncomfortable situation to be in since I've got something really good, but one or both players could have me beat. I check. The big blind checks, which he'd almost for sure do with sets, or he could even conceivably do this with 6-5 suited. Under the gun likes the price that he made it pre-flop. He sticks with it and bets 850 again. I don't see how I can fold to a bet that's less than a third of the pot. The problem is that while under the gun may have a hand like ace-king, in fact, that's what I think is the most likely hand he'll have given his line. I'm worried if I call it could look weak, and the big blind might put in a big check raise whether he has a strong hand or not, since this board crushes his range. What's almost an equally bad scenario is if I flat and the big blind calls behind me with a hand that has equity like 8-7 suited, 7-6 suited, pocket sixes, pocket fives, or any hand with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. If I call, there won't be any cards other than a jack that I'll want to see, particularly if it goes 3 ways to the turn. I feel super handcuffed. The one thing I have going for me is that I could have also smashed this flop given how I played it pre-flop. I do something a little unconventional and slide in a raise to 2000. It's a small sizing, so I can still get away from it if the big blind has a set and wants to play for a much larger amount than the under the gun straddler is capable of. If the big blind has anything other than a set, he's pretty much going to have to fold since I put it in the check raise and he still has a 3-better behind him who also put money in. If the big blind folds and the under the gun player jams for 2400 more, I'll have to side call off. I really hope that's not what happens though. If the big blind folds, I'm very relieved to see that. I have one less opponent to worry about, but I'm not out of the woods yet. I expect the under the gun player to rip it in if he has pocket aces or kings. My read on the situation is that he genuinely doesn't like getting raised, but it's only $11.50 more for him. He's getting a good price. He calls, which we've seen him do in previous hands with very little value. I still wouldn't be surprised if he has ace-king or ace-queen, especially if he's suited and has a backdoor draw. It's down to heads up. The turn is another 3. It's great to see the dealer keeping it low. It's now a $7,000 pot. The opponent has about 1/3 of a pot-sized bet left in his stack. There's a good chance that he has ace-high, but there's also a decent chance that he has a pocket pair better than mine. If he does, I guess this is just my time to double him up. I don't see how I can get away from this. Wish me luck. If I don't win this pot, I'm going to be in a brand new, deeper hole than the one that I spent hours trying to get out of. A big part of me wishes dinner was just 15 minutes earlier because then I would have been able to avoid this quicksand situation. This will be about a $12,000 pot if I get called. A lot of time is going by for this player to make his decision. Surely if he had aces or kings, he'd call without any hesitation since he's getting almost 4-1. I also think that he would have bet more with those hands on the flop. As each second passes, I'm more convinced that he has ace-high, perhaps with a heart draw, but maybe not. Not only could I have the best hand, I could be a big favorite. I just can't think of what he could possibly have that's beating me that he wouldn't have snap called me with. We already know that the 2-seat doesn't like folding. He's racking up more time in the tank than Mark Cuban. After 56 seconds goes by, the player finally makes the call. It's one of the biggest pots that I've ever played, but do we have the best hand? I think we could. I'd like some insurance though. The dealer puts out the miracle jiggity. I know that I joke with you sometimes, but not here. We make a full house in order to have what's almost certainly the best hand in a 5-figure pot.
It's a good river.
Would he get?
Hey, did I need the river?
You needed the river.
I suppose that we might have gotten lucky, and if that's the case, I feel bad about it for multiple reasons. I'm thrilled to have won, but I just don't like getting it in as an underdog, and I know how painful it is when others get lucky against me in similar situations. This is a little odd though, because the opponent doesn't seem too upset to have gotten sucked out on in such a massive pot. He's taken this better than anyone that I've ever seen take a bad beat before.
Nice catch.
Thank you.
That was a nice catch, yes.
There you go.
Hey, top house going into the
Your top house?
top house.
How are you tanking then?
At 7.
How are you tanking then when I shoved?
How was I taking? I just planned. What do you mean? What do you want me to do? We're going to get it all in anyway, aren't we?
This is maybe the most ridiculous conversation that I've ever had after a hand. He's saying that he 3-bet small pre-flop with pocket sevens when he could have called to close the action, which I don't think that I've ever seen anyone do. He tank called the flop raise. That's pretty reasonable with top set. Then tank called the turn with the second nuts for almost a full minute in a timed game. After I shoved all in, he was getting 4-1 on a call. If what he's saying is true, then I don't feel bad about sucking out on him at all, because it sounds like he was planning perhaps the most epic slow roll in the history of poker. What's way more likely is that he was behind the entire way and wanted to save face, so he made up something that made absolutely no sense. If he told me he had aces, kings, or queens, I would have been way more inclined to believe him. 3-betting pre-flop and tank calling the turn all in with top boat isn't a very credible story. I guess it doesn't matter too much anymore. The guy's been a fun person to play with aside from this incident. We'll never know for sure whether what he's saying is true or not. What's more important is that the stack is all the way up to 18,500.